All right, Twitch viewers, we are back with Happy Little APIs. This is Sang Kong, and we're in San Francisco this week. I'm pretty excited about that. We are in the Makers Lab. Is that what we call it, Paul? Is this the Makers Lab?
Maker Studio.
Maker Studio. So Nikki has kindly loaned us this to use for today. I'm excited. Today we're going to be talking about looking forward with private Amazon API gateways. But before we get there, I want to take a minute and have you tell them a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. My name is Sang, and I've been with AWS about 2 years, and I'm a serverless kind of guy, though I'm actually a generalist SA. So I cover one big account here they're one of the biggest towers, I should say, in San Francisco. So that should make it pretty easy to figure out. And thanks for having me here, man.
You're
I
welcome.
really appreciate it.
I'm thrilled. Yeah, I'm really excited. When we started talking about this, we started talking about how can we do private APIs, and I was looking for someone who, I'm always looking for someone smarter than me. It's not hard to find. But you ranked up there. You were highly suggested. So
I think I suggested myself.
You
You
did.
know, yeah. So
I didn't want to point that out. That was a little weird.
Yeah.
But there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyway, so we're gonna get started here shortly, and you're gonna be running the slides today. So
Okay.
You have to say something like next, or you tell me which is better for you. But so again, we're gonna be talking about Amazon building happy little APIs with. Wow, Eric can't talk today. This is episode 9. Looking forward with private Amazon API gateways. So let's kind of dig in and get an overview of what a private API is. And so we can jump to the slides and take a look here. All right, so I want to take you back a session. Back in the beginning, the very first episode, we talked about what are the types of APIs that are available. And we've talked about a few of them as we've gone through different series or different episodes in the series. But remember, we have edge optimized. Okay. Now I just use the one finger over and over again, so you guys will just have to deal with that. But we have the edge optimized, we have the private, and we have regional. And today we're specifically, obviously, going to talk about private. And the idea, when you think about this, was when I first started doing this episode. And see what you think on this.
Okay.
When I first started doing this series, Google Ballantyne, who used to run API Gateway, sat me down and said, you have to think of API Gateway as what's on the front and what's on the back. It's not just one idea, but it's here's the front and here's the back. What's who's connecting to it and what's it connecting to. And that was kind of an eye-opener, and you can see on our diagram here what we're talking about. Here's where the front, is it private, is it regional, is it edge optimized, and what's on the back, what's it connecting to. So little hint for you, when you're thinking about API gateways, that's a great way to think about it. So let's jump to the next slide if we can. And so in here, this is what we're going to be talking about today. Now, these are highly technical diagrams. I'm very proud of these.
They are nice.
Yes, I think so. So when you think about what we're going to build here, and we're building a private API. Now tell the viewers, what is a private API? And when we say private API, what does it mean?
So you think about the opposite, right? Public API, right? So public API means it's available to the world, while private API means that it's available to just a select few.
That's right.
You can think of it maybe friends.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
API for friends.
Yeah.
API for friends. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you see in the diagram here, you'll notice there's nothing coming in. It's not saying, hey, here's your client, here's the world getting into this. These are API gateways that are strictly limited to probably your VPC, maybe your on-premise, depending on how you're getting to it. But the idea is, let's talk technical for a minute.
Yeah.
Okay?
Sure.
So we create. The first thing we do is we create an endpoint network interface in our VPC, right?
Yeah.
We have to have a VPC first, I guess. We create that.
Yeah. So you have to have this private network, right?
Okay.
This idea of a private network, and that's usually in AWS. That's represented by a VPC. So that's kind of the center of everything.
Okay.
So any call from that private network, assuming you let calls from that private network in, and we'll get into kind of that later on, those are the calls that will be accepted by the API gateway.
Okay.
Right?
Alrighty. So how does and you can see the diagram, how does your instances, and I use instances, but it can be a number of things, but usually when we're dealing with a VPC, now, as you know, I'm a serverless guy. I love serverless. I can barely spell instance. I had to check spell this on this, or spell check.
Okay.
But when we're using VPC, a lot of times we're using VPC because we're dealing with things like instances, RDS, different things like that we need to secure. And now, I'm going to dispel a myth here real quick as I say this. A lot of times we have folks ask us, well, you don't use a VPC for serverless. Well, we do, but we don't. And let me explain what that means. Serverless, or when you use the Lambda servers, how's that going? Serverless, when you use the Lambda service, that is already in a VPC. It's in an AWS managed VPC.
Yeah, not your VPC.
No, your VPC, exactly.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, I'll ask people come to me when we talk about, putting a Lambda in a VPC, they say, the first question I ask them is, why do you put it in a VPC? Because architecturally, we've always said put everything in a VPC. And that's still true today, but Lambda's already set in a VPC. So I want to dispel that myth of, well, if it's not a VPC. So it's kind of off topic a little bit, but I get that question a lot. So back to our design here. So if we have our instances and we want to be able to connect to API endpoints, what do we have to put in the VPC?
So the thought is that you have to put this thing called an endpoint network interface, or an ENI.
Okay.
Right. So the way it, we'll configure it later on.
Okay.
But
We're going to show them the technical aspects of this as well.
We're going to configure a VPC endpoint.
Okay.
Right, which is powered by technology we call Private Link.
Okay.
Right. And once you do that, that means it's a private IP address that exists in your VPC in the form of an ENI, and you can call that from anything from that VPC.
Right.
Right. So whether that could be an EC2 instance, it could be a Lambda that's attached to that VPC as well.
Okay. Through a VPC endpoint for Lambda.
Through a VPC endpoint for Lambda.
All right.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Very interesting.
Right.
All right, so now looking at our diagram here, we've got our endpoint network interface, and we have and I've got multiple endpoints in there. Now, the way it's set up at the moment, this endpoint could theoretically hit any of these. I'm sorry, these instances could hit any of the endpoints. So one of the things that we do, and this is kind of the hero of our story when you think about how private endpoints work, is if you'll do the slide, if you'll go one more slide there. We have this thing called resource policies, okay? So this changes our architecture a lot. So we break out our instance. Let's say instance 1, we want to hit endpoint 1. Mm-hmm. Instance 2, we want to hit endpoint 2. And instance 3, we hit endpoint 3. And the way we do that is we can use resource policies, right?
Yeah, and something I want to point out too is that this may not be that obvious, but when you want to create a private API, you're actually just creating one VPC endpoint, okay?
Yep.
If you want to add a second private API, you reuse that
That's right.
endpoint again. So
That's right. That's how it's shown in the diagram.
Yeah, so that's why there's only one ENI. And one thing that the diagram is not showing is that if you have this set up for 3 AZs, you get one ENI per AZ. And you get one DNS that will essentially send it to the appropriate one, or you can call the DNS that's specific for that particular AZ. But the diagram here is just really representing one AZ, and that's what we're actually going to demo today, just one AZ for simplicity.
I feel like you're maybe you'd be mean to my diagram.
Oh, no.
All right. So this is my diagram. I spent a lot of time on these diagrams.
Yeah, I mean, they're beautiful.
They are.
You're good at that.
Color choices are important.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, a really good call out. This is only one AZ, and so if you have multiple AZs, you need multiple endpoints.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, multiple network interfaces.
Yeah, and it'll create that for you automatically when you set up the VPC endpoint and you specify the number of the subnets that you have set up. Right. Yeah.
Exactly. So let me take you to my next diagram.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and then by the way, the resource policy we kind of skipped that part. Yeah. So the resource policy is what is, you can think of it as your permissions, if you will. So you can specify things like, I'm only going to allow requests from this VPC, or more than one VPC, optionally. I'm only going to allow these specific IP addresses to call me. I'm only going to allow requests from this account ID. So you have these 3 primary use cases that in fact the tooling will walk you through in terms of creating those policies.
Yeah, and it's interesting about a resource policy, and I mean, security can be tough sometimes. IAM is tough.
It can be, yeah.
And so one of the things that I explain to people, if you've never heard of a resource policy, you think of roles, and roles say, I as this role can do this. Whereas resource policy says, this can talk to me. Okay, I protect what can talk to me. Roles say I can do this. So it's kind of a different way of thinking about it. And yeah, like I said before, the resource policy is really kind of the hero in this story as far as who can talk to what can do what. So let's jump to the next slide.
Yeah, and not to mention there are two more things to help you lock things down.
Okay.
So the ENI itself has a security group.
Yep.
And we'll have to configure that. And it also has a VPC endpoint policy that you can specify. And we're not going to configure that today, but that's a third thing you can lock down your
So do you
environment
feel
with.
comfortable, and maybe it's okay to say, I'm not sure on this, which overrides which?
They don't. None of them override each other. So they
So
all
they
work.
gotta- they gotta match up.
They all got to
Okay.
work in tandem, right?
Okay,
So
interesting. All right.
yeah, because they when you call the ENI, the first thing is, does it pass the security group, right?
Okay,
Are the ports open, right? And then it will check, am I allowed to? They don't check the VPC endpoint policy. Am I allowed to, access this VPC endpoint? And then once it gets through the VPC endpoint, it'll hit the resource policy and say, am I allowed to call this API?
All right. So
yeah.
it's a stepped effect.
Yes.
So, okay.
Yes.
Very cool. All right. Do you think now we could go to the next slide?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. All right. So the next slide here. So this really talks about what you were talking about earlier. Is multiple VPCs, multiple, and again, I'm not representing the AZs in here for reasons that I can't tell you. But I've removed. You can't see all the stuff inside, like the instances and the ENIs. But the power you can do here is you have a lot of connectivity that you control in keeping your accounts private, right? So I can have a cloud account 1 with 2 VPs in it, hitting my private API gateway, and I can have cloud account 2 with a VPC in it. So multiple accounts. That's the first thing. And I can have different data centers. So maybe I have a data center, and these are just showing different connectivity options. You can do AWS Direct Connect, or you could do site-to-site VPN. One of those types of however you connect to the cloud, to the AWS cloud. But you can see here, there's more power than just saying, hey, this one VPC, this one endpoint, that's all I got. You can have a very secure API endpoint. And we see this, a use case, and be interested to hear what you say as well, but a use case for this is, let's say I've got an internal private API that I want people to get, I don't know, maybe like a tool to tell everybody, to find people in the company, or a tool for purchasing something internal or something like that. Something we don't want outside, but we need an API, a normal API application. So a lot of use cases. What other use cases would you say?
I mean, anything that if you have APIs within your corporation, you want to move it over to the AWS, and this is the way to do it.
Yep.
Get a direct connect or a VPN, hook it up to your a VPC.
Yep.
VPC is kind of missing in the diagram, by the way.
Well,
Okay, yeah.
Did I miss it? Look at that. Hey, this is
technical.
Paul. Technical issue.
They can't see me.
Shut it all down. Give me the picture, dude.
Paul, I see Paul.
Yeah, you're in there. These are Paul's hands.
Are you like green screen kind of? Is that what you mean?
I went like that.
Oh, nicely done. So Paul just came in and fixed my mic. Well done. You're a professional, sir. Alrighty. Okay, so let's jump on. What's our next slide here? So this is an interesting thing to point out. Okay, and this is in your notes when we were talking about this. And I tweeted about this. Private API, bang equals. I was so proud to use like developer stuff. Yeah, that's Node obviously. Bang equals. It could be another language, I wouldn't know. And you guys can chime in. I'm sure there's people whose names we're not mentioning on the Twitch that have something to say. But private APIs do not equal API gateway private integrations. There's a difference.
There is a difference.
Okay.
Yes.
So and we can jump to the next slide to show it. But what's the difference? And really, it comes down to terminology. But what would you say are the differences?
So you kind of mentioned it, right?
Okay.
Earlier, you said API gateway. You have to think about the front.
Yep.
And you have to think about the back. So private APIs, that's the front.
Yep.
Who's allowed to access my API?
That's right.
And then private integrations is the back. Is where my API is going to be calling. You know.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and this diagram shows a private integration, and where this comes in really handy, and where this can kind of cross over into being a private API is what gets to the front, right? Exactly.
That's right.
You're exactly right. So in this particular, what you're able to do here is, let's say you have instances in a VPC that you want to be able to reach. Okay, so you can see in this diagram, using a network load balancer, an NLB, and using VPC link, same type of technology, API gateway can connect to those private devices. And so really, we see this in a standard architecture when I used to do non-serverless architectures or different things like that. We see like a load balancer, and it can route into these private VPCs. And so API gateway can also do that utilizing a network load balancer to do that. Yeah. So you can have an API, you control all your API, and the advantage here is, I have all my mapping. I have all the power that we've been talking about for 9 episodes now of what API can do, but still keep my infrastructure secure in a VPC.
That's right. Yeah.
And so that's what we call a private integration.
And it uses the same technology, in fact, that we use for private APIs.
It does.
Yeah.
Now there's some things to call out on this, and I think our next slide shows it. A couple things we want to call out. And I'll let you go for it if you want to call these out.
Sure. And so this is specific to private APIs. And number one, we don't support custom domain names yet.
Right. On private APIs.
On private APIs.
Right.
Okay. So that's just something to keep in mind when you start using this. The other thing is that you can share private APIs to other VPCs via VPC Endpoint.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's how it's essentially, that's the technology.
Yep.
Right?
Which we were showing earlier.
Yep.
Okay.
And you can actually chain things together as, we don't recommend this necessarily, but I have seen interesting architectures before where people are VPC endpointing a VPC endpoint with another VPC endpoint and so on and so on. It gets kind of,
I'd hate to be the guy who had to manage the security.
No.
Sometimes
not recommended.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, not recommended. And another note is that if you do decide that you want to do a private API from your on-premise network, is that you cannot use private DNS names.
Right.
All right. And I think that'll be a little clearer when we do the demonstration.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. So, speaking of, are you ready to take over? I mean, you've been around the slide deck. I'm gonna go grab some lunch.
Can you just give me something? Anything, all right?
Anything off the menu.
Anything off the menu.
Exactly.
Anything off the menu.
We had that discussion earlier.
Yeah.
All right. So what we're going to do now is Sandy's going to jump in and he's going to show some code on. We're going to set up a private VPC. So the question we get a lot is, how do I make sure only internal resources can get to my API gateway? And this is what we're going to show.
Yeah. So by the way, I'll caveat something. Is I'm going to be cheating a little bit because.
If we don't cheat on this shit.
Well, the thing is that if I set up a completely private VPC where I'm not even allowed to get into it, then I can't reach it.
That's problematic.
Yeah, that's problematic,
yes.
right? Yeah. So in order to, I set up a bastion essentially.
Well, and that's actually not cheating, because that's actually one of the ways you can talk to your private API.
Yeah.
Right? Is through a bastion. Your bastion sits where? In the public?
In a public subnet.
Exactly. Yeah. So I can reach that, and then once I reach into that, then it can talk to the private.
Yeah, and the private API only has a private IP address. So you can't actually get to it externally.
So we're locking that down with security groups?
We are, with security groups. Yep.
All right.
So let's get started. I'm just going to create a API. You can pick whatever you want. I'm just going to pick the example because it's there.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I do.
And it's that pet store application. So if you've ever used it, it's a nice little thing to kind of see all the different possibilities in terms of things like actions and so on.
And this is taking advantage of one of the beauties of API Gateway is a Swagger.
Yeah.
API Gateway is Swagger compliant. So.
Yep. So it provides a sample Swagger file. So we're going to select private. Something to note is that you can go from regional to private and back. Okay. It can't be both.
Okay.
It has to be one or the other.
Okay.
And once you get to private, and you
so if I set up a full private one, I can go later and change it to regional?
Yes, you can. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Now, if you do this other one called the edge optimized, you cannot go back. So,
Oh, okay.
so private,
Yeah,
you
that
cannot
makes
go
sense.
from private
Okay.
to edge
Alright.
optimized.
And Edge Optimize uses
CloudFront.
exactly.
Yeah, our
Yep.
CloudFront network.
Exactly.
So you notice here, it gives you a warning here. It says only accessible through VPC endpoints for API gateway. Create one,
Which is what we want.
which we're going to have to do, and add a resource policy.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to go hit import, and it's done. All right.
Oh, that was quick.
That was pretty quick, right?
All right. So where are you now?
So this is the API gateway UI. So the first thing I'm going to do is deploy it, because otherwise it's not going to be that useful, right?
Yeah, agreed.
So let's create a new stage. We'll call it prod. All right. You can call it whatever you want. Doesn't. Okay. So note that it says private REST API doesn't have a resource policy associated with
So
it.
does that
right?
mean anybody can get to it or nobody can get to
That means nobody can get to it.
Gotcha.
It doesn't work.
it? These privileges.
All right. All right.
Right.
So I'll cancel that, and let's go ahead and add a resource policy. I'll click on the resource policy, right? And then here you got a bunch of examples, right? I'll click on each one so you kind of get to see.
Okay.
Here's the account whitelist. You can pick the account that it's allowed to come from,
Oh,
and what
wow,
resource
okay.
it can essentially call.
Okay. Alrighty.
You can pick role. You can pick a particular role, in fact, or
Okay.
a user.
Alrighty.
You can also blacklist IPs. So these IPs are not allowed to access.
Interesting.
right?
Okay. All right.
All right. So deny if the source IP matches this CIDR block or these specific IP addresses. Right. But we're going to do the VPC one because, frankly, that's the easiest.
Okay.
All right. So here we go. And
So this is saying.
uh-huh.
Oh, you're going to go through it. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'll shut up and let you do it.
Yeah. So I'm going to make this a little simple and just use some star. Okay. All right.
Do not.
Wait,
try this at
wait.
home,
No.
people.
This is actually fine.
Okay.
I'm just
Okay.
saying. You can go ahead and call this API, right?
Okay.
And when I hit save, it'll actually fill it in for me.
Okay.
Okay,
Gotcha.
so
all right. Okay.
So I need to figure out what my source API VPC is.
Okay.
So I go to VPCs, and here I set up one up here called Happy APIs.
Okay,
Yeah,
nice.
it's a good idea to use tags, all right?
Okay.
If no one's ever said that to you.
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and copy the VPC ID, right? And then go back to this resource policy and just fill in this area right here where it says VPC ID, right? And that's it.
All right.
Right.
Very cool.
And when I hit save, it's actually going to fill in what region I'm in, my account ID, as well as
I doubted you.
as well as the
doubted
IP.
you.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
I didn't
yeah,
know it would
yeah.
do this.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I
kind-
knew it would do that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's cool.
yeah. I'm sure you knew.
I did.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what happens when I hit save, right?
Alrighty.
So the next thing I'm going to do is go back to my pet store, the top level, and then deploy. So deploy API. Now I can select my new stage, hit the prod, and hit deploy, and voila.
And so you don't get an error now.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
So I'm going to go ahead and select. I'm going to copy this URL because I'll probably. Maybe I won't copy it, but. So we have the VPC set up now.
Okay.
I mean, we have the API now. We have the private API. But now you have to configure your VPC to be able to call it,
Okay.
right? And
Makes
so
sense,
the
yeah.
way we do that is we put a VPC.
route, yeah.
We need a VPC endpoint.
Right.
Right.
Need a route to it.
So let's go to VPC endpoints here. I have a few set up here, but I'm going to go ahead and set one up for the VPC that I just created.
Okay. Looks like our folks, Mohib is on chat. He's answering questions left and right. I
Oh,
appreciate
awesome,
that. So yeah,
awesome.
they're taking
Thanks,
some
Mohib.
questions going on, and looks like they're being answered.
Yeah. So when I hit create an endpoint under endpoints within the VPC service, I go ahead and navigate down and find the execute-API.
Okay.
All right, and so this is a general purpose API general purpose VPC endpoint to call to execute an API.
All right. So
All right.
each of these are a type of VPC endpoint.
These are a type of AWS service that's been enabled by VPC endpoint.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
So like if you
Alright.
wanted to say get a private connection from your private VPC into say KMS,
okay,
you'd have to
okay.
create an interface endpoint.
Alrighty.
Why is that? Because
Because you're in a VPC.
yeah, and you don't need an internet gateway. You don't need a NAT gateway in this example, right?
Right.
You have a private endpoint for your VPC.
Connect, not go out and come back.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right.
Excellent.
Okay. So now we have that selected, and I pick which VPC I want, and I'm going to pick this happy APIs, make sure I got the right one. I only have one subnet, right?
Again, use tags. Because when you drop that down, did you see how the tags showed?
Yeah.
And I've seen people try to do it without tags or trying to remember the numbers, stuff like that. Tags are your friend. So.
Yeah, tags are your friend. And then I want to enable private DNS so we can show you that way of calling it.
Okay, all right.
Right? And then let me pick a security group. So I can pick, let me close this one up and say select the security group.
Okay.
And so I have a couple of security groups that I've configured for this VPC.
Okay.
So I'll just select the default, and before I close that off, I'll show you what it looks like, so you have an idea. All right.
Great.
So here's that default security group, and you can see that all traffic's allowed to it from other members of that security group.
Right.
But
Like that.
yeah, so my EC2 instance, right,
Okay.
is not using this security group, this default security group, and so what I wanted to do is make sure that it can accept traffic on the HTTPS port as well as HTTP.
All right.
Okay, for example, we really only need the HTTPS port, but I just did
Just in case.
just to show it, right?
Okay.
And so that's just normal setting up security groups,
Okay.
right? And so that's
Now,
yep.
let's stop here for a minute, because when you first look at this,
Uh-huh.
and I'm being honest, I looked at
Yeah.
it, whoa, so you're accepting 80 from anywhere? We're not outside our VPC yet.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not saying 80 from anywhere in the world, right?
Yeah.
It's saying 80 from within the VPC.
Well, it's just at the port level. So
Okay, it's at the port
there's a couple things going on here, right? One is that if you did somehow let somebody in,
Okay.
right? In other words, you opened up, you attached the internet gateway to your VPC, right?
Okay.
In that case, users from outside could potentially access your API.
Right. Okay.
Right.
But we haven't attached that.
We haven't attached that,
Gotcha.
and
So we're still-
but the resource policy as well will keep them from being
That's
able to
right.
call the API. So
And
there's-
that's what I wanted to call
Yeah.
out, because when you first look at this, you go
Yeah.
80 open to 000 what?
Yeah,
You know, so
yeah.
but that's not what's happening. So, okay.
So yeah, so you can do all three. Remember those three levels. There's a
Yes.
security group. There's a VPC endpoint policy. There's a resource policy,
Right.
and so it adds those three levels of protection, but you also have to configure three levels of
That's
protection,
right. That's right.
Or at least two, because security group's not an option.
Okay.
And here's the policy for the VPC endpoint, which I'm just going to leave alone. And
Okay.
essentially, there's full access,
Okay.
right? But
Alrighty.
best practice would
We can
be,
get more granular. with
yeah,
that.
least
So-
least privilege essentially.
Right. So if in a resource, what would we say if we were to do this? We would say maybe like EC2 instances or security. Would that be a security group? What would that be? What would that look like?
Usually, this is more for things like you could use like
A role?
a
Or,
role
Okay.
or yeah or
okay. So if I had a role on an EC2 instance, I could say that role has access.
yeah. So but in that case, it would actually require like credentials,
Oh, okay.
right? So you'd have to make the call with some credentials.
Okay.
I mean, probably from previous episodes of API Gateway that you talked about authorizers
That's
and all
right.
that,
We're
right?
hitting it, yeah, I was
Right?
like, what? But yeah, with API Gateway,
Yeah.
we have talked about authorizers.
And so it would actually it would test it here as well as test it there,
Okay.
right? So,
Got it.
but this is so for simplicity's sake, we're just going to not populate this and
Makes
just
sense.
say full access because
Okay.
I already know it's being locked down at the API
API
Gateway.
Gateway,
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. And I think I'm done. So let me double check. Looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and create endpoint. All right. This will take a little second. And you can see it's pending, so it's not quite ready yet. All right.
Awesome.
So that's going to take a few minutes maybe, or a minute. Yeah. And now we have all this set up. Let's try to invoke it, perhaps.
Okay.
Right.
Alrighty.
All right.
So it's available now. It's built.
Let's see. Is it?
Okay.
Not quite.
But I'm
It's still
looking-
pending?
I'm in the delayed.
Oh,
stream,
okay.
so
It's
yeah.
still pending.
Okay.
It might take a minute or so.
Okay. Do we need to wait on that?
Yeah, we do have to wait on that. Otherwise, it won't be available. But
Okay.
it's usually in about a minute. So.
Alrighty. So
Yeah.
I'm just looking through some questions we have here. It looks like Mohib is handling all the questions. So very cool.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, we've had some great questions here. So All right. So one of the questions we had is the resource types, and I'm sorry, this is the answer to it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going back here. Yeah, it looks like he's got them all answered.
All right,
so-
awesome.
Okay.
Okay, this is going to take a second. So,
All right. So we're waiting for that to do that. So while we're waiting, I'll talk about what we're going to be doing next episode as well.
Okay.
And you can let me know when that's ready. So I'm kind of excited about next episode. AM Grabalny. I'm sure I don't say that even close to right, so we're just going to call him AM. And I'm sure I'll hear from him on saying, how do you say it?
That's right.
Good, I got it right. Yes. All right, Eric can read. I may be wrong, but I doubt it. So he's going to be joining me, and we're going to be building an external proxy with API Gateway. One of the things that we learned, or that we're going to teach, is that you don't have to point inside with API Gateway. And that's one of the things. Well, it's API Gateway. It's an AWS resource. It must be, it must have to front something inside of AWS. Not true at all. We can point API Gateway externally. We have kind of a cool idea that we're working on where we're going to be using an external service provider for like location, and where we can wrap that with API Gateway. Because a lot of times when you use an external service provider, they'll have they'll have caching policies. They'll have they'll have throttling policies, different things like that. So one of the things you can do is you can wrap API Gateway around it, set all that, and so we'll be showing how to do that, building a little application to show that. I'm pretty excited about it. So AM was you're now committed. So I think he was on the fence, but now that I've said it, he has to be.
Yeah,
So.
I think that's good.
I do. That's how I got you.
That's a good
Yeah.
technique. Yeah.
Yeah. So we
Okay,
start up.
it's available.
What?
You see that available?
idea.
Available. Woo!
It's called time
available.
filler right there.
Good time filling. All right.
I can talk.
Yeah. So the way you invoke it is you have really three options,
Okay.
three different ways. The private DNS, okay, is here. When you go to the API, it actually gives you, if private DNS is enabled, you can use this URL
Okay.
to call it, right? And so that's to keep that in mind, right?
Okay.
And then
but you got to be
you
you
have
got
to,
to be connected somehow into the VPC.
yeah, you got to
Yeah.
be in the VPC essentially.
Yeah, you're not hitting that from outside.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if you want a public DNS name,
Okay.
you have the VPC Endpoint.
Okay.
Right, so see these DNS names? These are public DNS names right here on the bottom.
Excellent. Yes.
Okay, and then there's two ways of calling it there. All right, and I'll show you the two different methods.
Okay.
All right, so let's test this one out first, which is I don't know if you can see that. It's kind of small.
Yeah, I'd probably blow that up a little bit. If you've never seen this, we're using curl, which allows you to call a URL. If you're a developer, you've probably seen this, but
Yeah.
just so you know.
Okay, I'm gonna just copy this one, right?
Okay.
And then let's go over to my terminal. Actually, I don't want to say my terminal. I hope people can see that.
There you go.
Right,
Yeah,
and
that's
then
good.
let's see. Let's make sure. Let's SSH in, and then here's the curl, and it came back already. So
Okay,
Then this.
alrighty.
So this is using the private DNS name. Right?
Wow. Okay.
Okay, that's pretty fast.
All right. And this is your bastion you're connected to, right?
Yeah, this is
Okay.
my bastion, and
Okay.
I can change this a little bit so we can maybe get a little bit more detail. Verbose, and then
Nice.
you can see. Ooh,
Is it? It's. I think it might be.
I think I put an extra dash in. Sorry. All
Getting
right.
crazy on the verbose.
There, and so you can see like a little bit more
There
above.
you go.
You can see the TLS thing happening. You can see what actual IP it's hitting. Right?
Okay.
Which
Yep.
is our private IP. Right.
Right. Which does that always stay the same, or is that rolling?
It's a good question. It should stay the same because
Okay.
it's an ENI, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Once it's created, every time it's
Okay.
yeah.
And the reason I say that is if you use something like a load balancer or something like one of the pooled services, the IPs do roll a lot of times.
That is for that represents the load balancer.
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
You have the load
yeah.
balancer aspect. of it.
And so this is actually why you can front this with another load balancer. And,
Ah,
and
okay.
you can use an IP address as a target,
Okay.
right? And so you can specify these.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's why.
They should pay you.
Our customers think of. Hey, I didn't think of this idea. Our customers thought of it. You know.
Yeah.
Our customers are creative.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, they think
very.
of all sorts of ways to get around stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The battles of networking, the battles of DNS
Yeah.
are always a joy
Yeah.
to fight. So, okay.
All right. So this is just the REST response that comes back from this sample pet store API that we
Okay.
used. Okay. And that's JSON for those that
Right.
like that.
Yep.
Yep. And then the other one is copy this command in is and just to quickly walk through it, and just doing curl with the verbose command. But this one here is our public DNS for the VPC endpoint itself.
Okay.
Right? And so it's going through the whole path, but you have to specify a header. And the header is you specify the host plus the actual host name of the API.
Can you close your window so that it's over to the left a little bit, because I think that the information's behind my big old fat head.
Okay.
So there we go. Alrighty.
There you go.
So that kind of gives you an idea. Okay. So explain this again. A private person or a public. So does this mean you're still using the bastion? Could I hit this from anywhere?
I'm calling from the bastion host,
Okay.
right? So that's where
But if this is a
SSH into.
public DNS, and I know that header, could I call it from like my machine?
I mean, it's not. If we opened everything up, maybe.
If we open a
Yeah.
And that's the point
Yeah.
I'm making.
Yeah.
So when we say public DNS, it's still what does that mean? If it's still not available to the world, but it's public.
Uh-huh.
Can you explain that?
Oh, it is available to the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they can't hit it. No, I'm sorry. You can't hit it unless we've opened.
Yeah.
it.
I mean,
Okay.
DNS just gives you what server
Gotcha.
what IP address essentially
Okay.
that name is associated
But we still
with
have
it.
it locked down.
We have it locked down. Yeah.
There we go. Okay.
3 different ways.
And that's
right?
what I'm trying
yeah,
to explain. Is saying public, it doesn't mean that it's available.
Yeah, and it's not even. You can't even access it from outside,
Okay.
right? So you'll
Because
never.
it's locked down.
Yeah, even if we didn't lock it
Yeah, yeah,
down,
yeah.
since the
Okay.
VPC itself is locked down,
Right.
then you can't
That's all
access
you
it.
do.
Yeah,
I follow.
right. So this is the way you would call it if you're calling it from your on-prem. Yeah, you're calling from your
Okay.
on-prem, and then you're trying
That
to
makes sense.
right.
Okay.
You're direct connected into AWS, and
Okay.
yeah.
And that's how you. Okay.
And this is how you would call it. Right?
Okay.
And so let's. All right. So let me clear the.
Yeah, we got some weirdness going on there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Our terminal may have died.
Curl got stuck.
There it is.
So it resolved to the 10.00.52.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not happy. What's going on? Yeah, something's
Interesting.
funky. Yeah.
So do you think we don't have something open that needs to be opened?
Maybe I got the DNS name wrong. That's possible,
Maybe.
right? So you can see that I use this fvldt, and I go back to here. I can check fvldt. So it looks right.
Yeah.
It could be just my terminals being wonky. Yeah, let's try that again.
And it's resolving.
Yeah, it's resolving, but it's
Alright.
yeah, it's kind of getting wonky. But let's try this
I
one.
don't know. That almost tells me.
Maybe
Yeah, let's see what the other one does. So
yeah, that one worked.
that feels like we don't have something opened up.
Yeah.
So it's a public IP. We're hitting it from your bastion.
Uh-huh. Oh, I think I know what I did wrong.
Okay.
Let me go back to here, and maybe it would help to put like an HTTPS. Maybe that would help. Oh, forbidden exception.
Interesting.
Ooh.
All right, here's the joy of live coding right now. Okay.
Yeah, it's not letting me do it for whatever reason now. Oh, I know. See this host that we're using?
Yeah.
It's wrong.
Oh,
I didn't change it.
There you go.
There you go. So if
Alrighty.
I have to change that host.
So that's the header. So we were still resolving to the VPC ID
Yeah,
that we needed to, but then it didn't know what to hit the host.
that's right.
Okay.
Yeah,
There you go.
it's
Well
good.
done.
You know, it's good to make mistakes.
It is good to,
on live stream,
I
right?
wouldn't know myself. That
Yeah,
was all you.
yeah. So there you go.
Hey, look at
That
there.
was, it was that simple.
Y'all notice that I fixed that for him?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Did you?
I- That's how it's going to look on Twitter.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
No, Stang figured it out. Wrong host. So let's explain what's happening there. So the first one that we're doing, so we're hitting a DNS. Okay.
Yep.
That's a public DNS.
That's the
Okay.
VPC endpoint. That's the VPC endpoint DNS, right?
Now the header that we're passing is the host of the API gateway, right?
It's the host of the API gateway,
Okay.
right?
Or is it the ENI?
It's the host of it's the host of the API gateway.
Okay, so we're routing into the right one. So
Yeah.
if I had multiple API gateways there, could I change that host?
Yeah, you would change that host header.
There you go.
Yeah, that's how you. That's how
I don't
you.
know if that's the way I would do it though.
I mean, but you,
Yeah.
if you want to use a public DNS,
Right.
right? Then you have. That's really the way to do it,
Okay.
right?
Right,
Or this other way, which is
Right.
very similar. You just use a different header in this example, but
Okay.
yeah,
Now, what's the difference between these two?
instead of sending it to with a host name, it
Okay.
uses something called x-API GW gateway dash API.
okay, yeah, it's the
You provide the
API,
API ID,
Yeah. Okay.
right? So
Okay.
yeah, it'll do the same thing. So, but let's take a look at what it looks.
Man, that's fast.
Yeah, it's super. You know,
Yeah.
API gateway it's
Yeah.
pretty fast
Yeah,
service. you know?
it rock and rolls.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
all right. So okay, very interesting. So what we're doing here is the first way we hit was hitting the private
The private DNS.
DNS, and does that hit the API gateway directly at that point?
It still goes to the VPC
Goes to
endpoint.
the
VPC
but
endpoint.
it's called to the endpoint on the
Yeah, it just
Right.
does some private DNS stuff to know to go to the VPC
Okay.
endpoint, right?
The
Yeah.
second one is the public, but I'm passing a header to route it to the specific API endpoint that I want.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
because we only have to make one VPC endpoint for
Right.
all private APIs
Right,
in
right.
that VPC.
Right, so I
Yeah.
may have 30 API gateway endpoints, but I just pass, so I can call the same one over and over, just passing different headers.
That's right.
Excellent.
Yeah, so you can do it either using that host header,
Okay.
or you can use the API gateway ID,
Okay.
the API ID, I should say,
Okay.
right?
All
And
right.
so you can see that it's just the first section of the private DNS name.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That ID.
So this is pretty slick. So in the end game, was there more you were going to show? I'm sorry.
No, that's it.
Okay, that's it. All right. So the end game is I'm able to lock this down, but I still have flexibility. Here's my endpoint. My application is call an endpoint, pass a header. I'm good to go. Or they can do private DNS. Yeah, I think when you're challenged, I think some people tend to run away from this because it can seem kind of confusing. But the way we've set it up, and if you'll walk through the steps real quick, just kind of walk through those again. When you set up the VPC, we create a VPC first. I'll do it, and you correct me.
Yeah, create a VPC first.
Right.
Yeah.
Create VPC first. Then would you do the NI next?
You can do either way.
matter.
Right.
Okay,
yeah.
right.
So today I created the private API first.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to create create the API, create the NI, then I create the resource policy.
Resource policy.
Okay.
Right.
And then I have to configure those.
Uh-huh.
And then once that's done, I've got an API that can only be hit from within my VPC or route through my VPC.
That's right. Right.
All right.
Assuming the resource policy is set up right. Yep.
Yep. Hey, so we do have a question and it's where is that header key documented? And you had some documentation you're using.
Yeah.
Can you throw that in the Twitch channel if you have it?
Sure. It's
Okay.
right there. Actually, I don't have the.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Why don't you just send it over to me? Chime it to me.
Oh, chime it to you. Okay. Yeah.
Alright, and I would take chime off your window. So
Yeah.
there you go. I don't know if you can or not. He's
Yeah,
got us up,
I
so
don't know
we're
if I
good. Yeah,
can,
he's got
yeah.
us up. So
Do I?
all right.
Oh, you got. Okay.
So,
Cool.
yeah, you can chime me. So what we're going to do is we're going to get that link for you guys. Any other questions? We've got a few minutes left here. This was a little shorter but sweet one. So if you have any other questions, we're glad to answer these. And there's a note from Paul says he's going to fix my mic. That's bold. So yeah. All right. Here it is. All right. I'm going to grab this documentation and I'll post it to the Twitch channel. And here we go. what other questions do we have? I'm reading back here to see if we're missing anything. Again, Mohib answering like a monster, so I appreciate it. And I think we're good. We'll give it a second for any other questions. And now, one thing I am going to grab for y'all is we do have a link that my man Paul over here has been managing for me. That is a link to all of our Twitch episodes so far. This is a collection. There might be some that are a little out of order, but I'm going to post in the Twitch channel, and you can go back and watch these if you would like. I know that you're going to watch them all, I'm sure. So we do have another question. It says, can I use an ENI to front another API gateway so I can chain them together?
Yeah, you can.
Let me ask the other question based on where this came from. Would I want to?
I have seen some interesting. So, like, I don't know if I should share this, but I will, because it's legal. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Legal.
It's legal.
Okay.
So
I have no idea what you're going to say, so
yeah.
this is all on you.
So I've seen, I mentioned that we don't. The currently private APIs don't support custom DNS names, right?
Right.
So I have seen someone basically figure out how to do that by fronting it with a NOB.
Okay.
That has a custom domain name.
Yeah, that's legal.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
yeah.
the cert is.
If you can get it to work,
Yeah.
it's legal.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
that's totally
yeah.
legal. So,
Yeah.
okay. Alrighty. So, yeah, that is a good quote. It says, I can say this, comma, it's legal is how all the best stories start.
There you go.
That is true.
That is true,
Thank
yeah.
you, anonymous donator to the Twitch chat. I appreciate that.
Oh, anonymous. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's an anonymous contributor.
Yeah.
So, alrighty. With that, I think we're gonna call it. Unless there's any other questions come in here. And thanks for everybody who joined us today. It was a great session. Thank you very much. This goes pretty deep. We've gone a little deeper than on some of the other ones, and so some good technology coming here. I really encourage you to follow. If you bring up the slides again real quick here, we've got our Twitch handles, and you can pass back real quick here. So let me talk about, again, I've already kind of told you what's coming up next. So